Hello friends and fellow VEDSies, and welcome back to day 16 of VEDS. I'm out here on the beach in one of the few moments when it's probably not going to rain on us, taking full advantage of that. I actually don't like filming out in public, or at least not filming where I'm talking to the camera. This is something I have a lot of respect for other VEDSies when they do it, because it's something that I don't like doing. I feel like I'm inconveniencing people and kind of weirding them out. I also don't know what the audio is going to be like for this video because I didn't pack my lav mic. It's kind of windy out here, plus, of course, the ocean. So hopefully you can hear me and I don't have to refilm this because, once again, I don't like filming outside. It's been a great week in VEDS, and it's been a great VEDS overall. James, in his day 15 video, talked about how he thinks this is a year for the books. You know, there's something interesting there because it's not like any of us have made like a magnum opus or like the amount of people who have joined VEDS skyrocketed. But it's just a year where we all put out really good videos so far. And so I think there's something to be said about taking full advantage of a year like this, and I think we've all done that. And I'm really grateful, of course, for everything that y'all have made, and I'm excited to see what else y'all are gonna make with the last half of the month. Building off on that gratitude, I want to say thank you to Abby for your 6-word story videos. Fun story. I got into the call for my weekly D&D game with Tessa. Tessa hops in the call, and one of the first things she says to me is, "Have you seen Abby's video?" And I was like, "No, I've been prepping for D&D, but I'll get to it, afterwards." And I was kind of curious. It's like, why did this specific video did Tessa want me to see so badly? When I saw it, I totally got it because it's just one of the kindest things that I have seen in a long time. And I really appreciate everything you said. You have a 6-word story and a weird compliment coming from me because I feel like you deserve one. But also I'm going to more broadly fulfill that challenge a little bit later in the month. As for some other stuff that has gone on in VEDS this week, obviously there have been a lot of challenges, both presented by me, but then Abby gave theirs, and Tessa gave some in yesterday's video, and Alicia presented one earlier this week. I'm going to try to get to as many of those as I can. Also, something about the challenges. Just a big thanks to Tessa for doing personalized challenges. This is something Jesse always did, and I've tried doing them in the past. I think I did them one year. But once I come up with like 1 or 2 broad challenges, my mind kind of shuts down, and it's like, no more challenges. So your ability to do it, I'm just really grateful for that. And I think you presented some really good ones this year. Just some other thoughts I had on this week. James, I really liked your commentary on your Jimmy Neutron video. It's really cool to go back to some of your older videos, which I know I've seen, but just to see the evolution of how good you've gotten at the technical side of it, of your editing, your audio and stuff like that, but also how like solid your ideas were back then. I cannot go back to my old videos because they are all terrible. So I respect the ability to go back and to reassess stuff that you have done in the past. I think that's really cool. But finally, kind of the meat of the video that I wanted to get into was based on 2 videos that Abby made. One of them talking about circular stories, and the other one talking about show don't tell, but more specifically, discovering tools within your storytelling toolbox. When I was a kid, I thought I wanted to write fiction, so that's something that I pursued. However, when I was reading Lightning Thief for the first time, the first Percy Jackson book, I kept picturing it as a movie, and I kept being like, how would I adapt this? Not just visualizing it in a way of a movie, but actually trying to figure out how the structure would be affected by an adaptation. And that kind of started me on this process of discovering that I'm really much more of a visual storyteller. So I pursued that in high school. I go into film school in college. And in film school, I direct films because that's what you do in film school. And I realized I don't like it. I don't have the skill set for it. And there are other elements of filmmaking that I prefer. Specifically, writing, which is screenwriting is something from freshman year onward I always enjoyed doing. And I always felt like I got the most creative satisfaction out of that. So it's kind of this weird circle where I started at writing, then I dipped into film, and film allowed me to understand what kind of writing I wanted to do. I had a friend from film school yesterday who posted on their Instagram story asking us whether or not as creatives we kind of fit ourselves into these boxes. And I feel like I don't intentionally do that, but I feel like everyone kind of puts boxes around themselves until they start to create and start to collaborate with others and start to discover new creations. And then they start to realize the boxes they formed around themselves and how they can expand those boxes. And I think that whole process, both the story I just told, Boss, with your video kind of hints to that. And then for your circular one, I find that one just really interesting, this idea of what a story is, and the idea of telling a story that begins and ends in the same place. I'm going to really oversimplify Joseph Campbell's monomyth from Hero with 1,000 Faces. For those of you who don't know, Joseph Campbell was a philosopher and mythologist who came up with this structure that he believed most stories, or all stories, fell into. And just to oversimplify that, character starts at a status quo. There's a threshold that they have to cross where some kind of inciting incident forces them to leave that status quo. They dip down, and kind of in that dip down section, they have all these struggles and they have to overcome stuff, and then they return to the point where they were, but that now they are changed. Think about it in terms of like Frodo returning to the Shire after Lord of the Rings. He has returned, but because of all the baggage and stuff and all the trauma from his time carrying the ring, he cannot stay there. He has changed, and so he has to go to the Greylands. And I think this is fine. I think this is interesting. I think all stories are kind of circular in this. I think where Campbell kind of falls off, though, is that change doesn't necessarily need to happen. I think the more interesting idea in stories is whether or not the change happens. It's something I call the Captain America Ironman effect. Captain America as a character is one who inherently doesn't change that much. He's frozen in ice at the beginning of his story, and then once he wakes up, he is then continually challenged in his assertions and his beliefs and his values, and his heroic duty is to not falter, is to stick to those ideas. Like I said, not every story, just kind of him as an archetype, that's what he does. Iron Man, on the other hand, is a character who is rooted in change. He is also kind of based on this idea of a myth where Captain America is like this mythological World War II soldier. He's kind of this mythological capitalist, industrialist, innovator. And central to that is him kind of as this problem solver who sees problems and then changes them. And also, because he's a Stan Lee created character, he has a very central and obvious flaw that he also has to overcome. And so where Captain America is presented with a challenge and has to stick to his values, Iron Man is presented with a challenge and either he has to change or he has to change the world around him to fix it. But I think that kind of idea gets into the root of the song that you were presenting in the circular story. And the joke there, of course, is that nothing changes. The characters go on this big circle of inquiry, I can't say that word, inquiring, and they are not able to change it at the end because it kind of all loops back around. So where you have the more dramatic side of storytelling with the Captain Americas who are presented with a challenge and then do not change, here you have the more comedic side. It's kind of the same with Seinfeld, right? In Seinfeld, one of the rules that the show writer Larry David laid out was that the characters could not learn lessons. So they are presented with challenges and usually caused by their own selfishness. And then by the end, we are allowed to laugh at them because they have ended up in the exact same situation that they started in. So what I guess I'm saying is that all stories are circular. The driving force of a narrative is whether or not something changes. Doesn't have to. Nothing really has to happen even. Just the central thesis of will this change, will this not, is the dramatic question that all stories hinge on. Am I right in this? Absolutely not, because only Sith deal in absolutes. Just like Joseph Campbell's monomyth didn't really cover everything in storytelling, my idea of change, don't change doesn't cover everything in storytelling either. Just a very broad brush that we can use to understand stories a little bit better. Maybe. I don't feel comfortable comparing myself to Joseph Campbell. So I've been recording a little while. I'm sure I've gotten some strange stares, but I have made it my duty to stare directly into the camera so I don't get psyched out. So I will see all of you, my friends and fellow VEDSies, tomorrow.